And so in this video, we're gonna go over some exercises and motor patterns that satisfies what I consider all the criteria for proper training. One is it functional, right? And that's a word that's been thrown around, functional training. And now there's, I see videos on social media all the time of some pretty crazy movement patterns and swinging things and doing things while they look functional. Take a step back and say, when do I move like that in life, right? On my everyday life, your client's everyday functioning of getting in and out of a car, moving groceries around the things, when do we move in that dynamic of movement? Now, I understand higher level athletes do possibly move into those positions, but your everyday function people, kind of not really, And so when you apply those cool exercises to some of your clients, a couple of things can happen. One, they can get hurt, right? Because they're very high level. Imagine trying to get a Susie Smith, who's a mom, like, we're gonna do backflips. Of course you would be like, wow, of course she might fall on her neck and break her neck. But when she tries to do some of these more dynamic movements, right, where many of her joints, in fact, all of her joints are being controlled, or I should say lack of control, what's gonna happen is there's just gonna be micro rubbing in her spine. Like she doesn't have this skill to stabilize that many joints at once, right? And so in some of the videos I talk about what are the 4 variables that goes into motor control, right? You have how many joints are moving, how many joints are being controlled, is there acceleration and deceleration, are you on a stable or unstable surface, and how many directions are you moving? Those are the only 4 variables to consider whenever you're considering, is that exercise too high or too low of a skill for Susie Q, right? So there's a way we come up with how to measure that. And so in this exercise, I'm going to choose movements that are in the way we look at things at a level 3, 4. Most people test around level 3. And so this should satisfy functional movement patterns. It should satisfy good spinal stability and motor programming. It should satisfy, it burns lots of calories because most people work out, of course, you want to burn some calories. And so with all 3s in place, we're going to take a look at some movements, right? And so, we're a big proponent of PNF patterns, right? Proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, fancy word for sort of diagonal patterns, right? If you look at life, we don't move in straight lines, right? When you go to get your coffee cup, you don't do this like that, right? You would just reach across your body and drink, right? When you go get your seatbelt, when you put your coat on, when you reach behind your back, we move in these diagonal patterns. And so some very smart physical therapists figured this out 20 years ago. And so we like to use those types of movements because, not only are you going to get stronger in the gym, you're going to get stronger in life using the same motor patterns, right? Because a lot of times when you move in straight lines, it's not the same movement patterns as, life. And so in this position, we're going to take a look at a simple chop going up, right? And you can literally turn every 30 degrees. And now if you notice, it changes the motion, right? And so you can chop the other way, chop across, chop. You can even go forward, chop. What does that do? That movement pretty much worked almost every muscle in my body. My trunk had to stabilize. That was actually one of the great ab exercises you'll see. You can actually make it greater simply by adding a squat to it, right? Simply because you burn more calories. But my trunk had to stabilize to prevent any twisting. If you notice, doing those movements, I did not have any rotation of my spine. My spine was stabilized and being challenged in multiple degrees of variation, right? Different pulling forces from a circle. I just basically turned 30 degrees. And if you look at the movements that we did, right, going across, going like this, right? Imagine throwing something over your shoulder, pulling something, moving something across. Like we rarely do straight line movements like this, right? In life, we don't really move in these straight lines. We typically so imagine you're emptying the dishwasher. Do you turn? We don't do that, right? So we just kind of move across, right? And so a lot of times we move in these diagonal patterns, and this exercise follows that functional movement. And so you can actually do a variation, right? We can do exactly the same process of chopping down, keeping the spine stable. If you notice, I'm not twisting or rounding my back as I'm doing this. My spine is being stable. We can go forward, right? We can go straight facing it in a lunge position, right? We can do, again, turning variations of a chopping motion, which kind of changes the angle, changes the stability, changes the challenge of how your core needs to stabilize from different directions, right? So this movement right? These chopping type movements can be done at first without your legs moving, right? Just because it's easier motor pattern wise. And then you can do it with movement, right? And then you can do it in a more challenging motion where your base of support can be in the opposite plane of the movement. What do I mean by that? Well, first you want to look at the gym. A lot of times we'll see people doing bicep curls, which I'm not a big fan of, but if you were to do bicep curls, you see people standing like this. This makes really no sense because in life, you want to have plane of stability in the same motion. What I mean by that is, right now, my stance gives me good balance in what's called the frontal plane, side to side, right? I have my feet side to side. But yet I'm moving in the sagittal plane, opposite planes, right? So ideally, if you want to build stability, you should stand in a slight split stance, like a lunge position, if you were to do a bicep curl. Because now you have the same plane of motion as the movement. That makes much more sense. And so you can apply that concept to this. So at first, if you wanted to have basic stability training with your clients, if you notice, I'm moving two planes actually, right? We have frontal and there's some rotation force. So there's two planes of motion. So my stance is in a frontal, but you could stand in a sagittal plane to make this much more challenging for your clients, right? And so you can make that judgment. It's a much higher level of stability. So in our motor pattern way of looking at exercise, it's a higher level. And there's also, you can lunge while you're doing it. You can actually, we have clients pretty advanced. You can do a one-legged squat doing it. And again, we don't do that with your everyday people. There's no need. We do that with, athletes and higher level people that need that type of function. And so there's now this sense of movement mastery while you're teaching them proper functional movements, right? And so those things always have to meet three criteria, right? Lots of calories, spinal stability, and proper motor patterns, right? Diagonal patterns. And try to eliminate as much straight line movements as possible. The only time I recommend any straight line movements is if you have someone that is so uncoordinated, they cannot handle these diagonal patterns, right? And so there is actually a scientific process to teach this to clients. I would love to share this with you. So look in some of the videos, maybe there's somewhere on here, I'll probably put a link with information to learn this process. It is my passion to be able to teach this science, this process that we've been using in here for the last 5 years to get clients in amazing shape with ease of programming. We're talking literally click, click, click button. These are the exercises that kind of fits their bodies. You select your workout from those exercises because without this, it's pretty daunting, right? Like, wow, what movements does it serve this client who has maybe a back issue, who has some weak shoulders? What is the process of figuring that out? We literally made that dummy proof. It literally is a program. You check a bunch of boxes. What's their skill level? Is their skill level 3? Do we want to emphasize their shoulder, but yet they have a back issue? You click that, it basically spits out for you the exercise that you can choose from to then make their workout and variations of their workout. And so it is my passion to share that with you starting this year. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me.